budget priorities, which is our top priority for this meeting.
Okay. Thanks, Kendra. And again, I'm sorry about your dog.
Well,
It's
thank
hard.
you.
It's hard, like part of the family.
Yes.
It's hard. All right. So again, just to take a step back and remind everybody what the budget process is. So basically, in now April, May, and June, all the committees are meeting to review the budget items that were submitted last cycle, and we're going to be reviewing them, and then we're going to be deciding if we want to change it. And as you can see from what I'm sharing here, we did get some feedback from the city, and then also some feedback from Heather, from Heather and Christine. So this is the first step along this process. So all the committees will then be submitting their budget priorities by the end of June. And then over the summer, Heather will be sending out a questionnaire to the community to ask the community to give their input in terms of budget process. Then in September, we're going to be having a meeting of all the chairs, and we're going to be ranking all the priorities. And again, just to remind you, we get 40 capital priorities and 25 expense. A capital priority is something that lasts more than 5 years and costs more than about $50,000. An expense is like a programmatic expense, salary, other types of goods like that. So so that's pretty much the overview. And so any questions on that? All right. So everybody could see this was the main budget priority that made it last year. And it was number 22, and it was an expense priority. So everybody can see it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you want to take a minute to read it through?
Mark, I just have a question. What is the likelihood of us getting something like this in just in a general statement, not based on the level that it's at? Like you said, it's number 22 on the list, but because I saw the response. They said it's like based on the funds, and then they just said like we can't fund this right now. But diabetes programs are still very much relevant in this.
Right. So what are the things that we learned? And every year we do this, we learn more. One of the things that we learned from the feedback from the city, and you can see from this, from this proposal, it's better to be specific than general, because the more general you are, the more of a general answer we get. Now, I know we were specific on nutrition last cycle, but you saw the city answer that basically said these are all the nutrition programs that exist. Plus, Councilmember Schulman, which is one of the reasons why we proposed this, Councilmember Schulman actually had gotten this past the council, and this had already been funded. So what I would suggest to the committee is, yes, I mean, under the general rubric, we need more health education. I would suggest maybe we could brainstorm and come up again with a specific area in health education that you think needs more of a focus. Off the top of my head, I would suggest we should go more to the mental health side and substance abuse side, and I think we should do more education to basically address the stigma that we know is attached to mental health and substance abuse. And I know in this committee in the past has had many discussions about harm reduction, and one of the challenges that communities face when they want to bring in harm reduction is, again, this misconception of what mental health is, as well as what substance abuse looks like. So maybe we could, this is my thought, and again, it's open to discussion, but maybe what we can suggest is that we can suggest some type of educational program to address stigma associated with mental health and substance abuse.
Don't we already have all that? Like, isn't there programs like that already in Rego Park and Forest Hills? I mean, I just want to know what they're going to respond and say, because I feel like we have that stuff. I mean, maybe is it readily available? Is it readily known? Probably not. But is it out there? Possibly.
Right. Well, at one point, do people remember Thrive NYC?
Hmm.
A few years ago,
Yes.
the mayor's wife led it. And honestly, yes, when Thrive NYC was part of the pun, thriving, yes, they were kind of taking leadership in this. But honestly, I guess we can research and see if there are other stigma programs. But from what I remember, they were taking leadership, and I think they've I haven't seen much of them from Thrive NYC in a while. So I don't know if there are other programs that exist. But yeah, Bradley, it's a point well taken that we should maybe try to think about something that does not have, that's not being addressed, that there aren't resources for.
Yeah, and I wonder if there's stuff that's being done, if there's work that's being done that's worked well in other places that is specific that hasn't yet, taken root in Forest Hills that we could kind of steer that towards.
Right. Well, we don't have to decide tonight. It's May, we have till June 30th. So if this was the only priority that we got in the last cycle. So if people want to think about this and think about under the rubric of health education, because I do think we need more health education, what type of things do we need more health education around? And are there resources in the community that need to be beefed up?
Yeah, and I agree that I think anti-stigma is a big one.
Yeah, but I think before we put it out there, maybe we should try to do a little bit of research, as Brantley suggested, and see if there are existing programs. Because I would hate to put it in and then we get the feedback from the city like we did last year. We had all these nutrition programs, so like leave us alone, kind of deal. I prefer to have something that maybe there isn't a lot of.
I'll chime in because
Yeah.
my organization's in my headquarters are in Forest Hills, and we offer these programs, substance abuse, mental health support. Like one of our main goals is to end the stigma around mental health. That's one of our strategic plan goals for the Child Center. One thing we recently started, and it wasn't in Forest Hills, we actually started in Jamaica. That's why I'm bringing it up. And I could be wrong. Let me know if there is other programs like this in Forest Hills Jamaica Park that I'm not aware of. But I don't know of a lot of military services programs surrounding PTSD and mental health. Do we have those readily available? I know we have the general offices, but do we have offices in Forest Hills and Jamaica Park that are focused in supporting our militaries, in our military like veterans and our current active military individuals? Because that's something we saw a big need in Jamaica. That's why we created that program for the Child Center. I'm just wondering if anybody has any feedback on that or knows of any program specifically focused in that outlet of mental health.
Does anybody know?
It'd be a great question for Danny if he was still on the board.
Right.
But no, I don't know. I know, like, no, I don't know.
I mean, we can ask Michael Arcadi. He's chair of the Veterans Committee. Oh, and that's one of the things that we're doing different this year. What we decided is, I remember last year we would share priorities. You'd have like 3 committees proposing the same priority. We decided this year to only have, like one committee, because the whole purpose of having a priority is to get it on the main list. And it doesn't matter if one committee says it or 5 committees say it, it'll get on the list if it's considered an important priority. So we decided for this cycle, like for example, we haven't talked about supportive housing, because that's more of a priority for land use. So they're going to lead with that. So that could be a mental health thing too, but land use is going to lead with that one. So far we have on the table, kind of like general education about stigma, about substance abuse, and then Brantley is suggested that maybe we focus it, we focus more on education for veterans, right? Is that what you were saying, Brantley? Oh, you're muted.
My apologies. Or, I mean, yes, or just let people know that it's available. So I guess when you think of education, just letting them know the services are available. I actually just looked, I just did a quick Google search, high level, and I just see one like location that comes up, and it's at Northwell. And we've all talked about how we feel about that hospital in Rigo Park. So maybe this is something that we can think about and seeing.
Maybe it's something we could think about, and maybe if there's only one resource, maybe you can use a little bit more.
Yeah, that's just me throwing it out there. I don't know how everyone feels about it, but I just want to give that as more of a specific request in general.
So, do people want to think about this? I don't know if we need an answer right now.
Is that the only one that we needed to think about? Like, were the other, because
So that's the only one for, again, last cycle that would bring it up again, because all the capital stuff is covered by other committees, and that was the only expense item that this committee proposed last year that made it. But again, we're not limited to that. And if people want to think about it, and maybe we could do an email chain, and or maybe, I don't know when you're planning, if we're planning to have another meeting in June, but then maybe we can, now that you kind of got an overview of what this process is and the one priority that we have, think about it. And then maybe we come back next month. And I mean, I will share with people that I think a major issue around health that would require more education, and I think there's a waiver coming down the pike on this, is, and actually Dr. Ida Messina and I are meeting next week with Council Member Lee, Linda Lee from, she's the chair of the Mental Health Committee of the City Council. And we're meeting with her, again, to have discussions about trying to educate the community more about the importance of how health and mental health is so finely entwined. And the way our systems are set up, it's different systems. So the concept is that we should have primary care doctors working more closely with mental health providers, so that if they identify an issue, depression, anxiety, or substance abuse, or other types of issues, that there's kind of like an easy way to get them hooked into treatment. So maybe that's something we can think about in terms of kind of like educating the community, and not only educating the general community, educating the medical community about how we feel that this is an important, and me personally, from my experience in the health and mental health field, it's sorely needed, because I still think ultimately there remains a big disconnect between health and mental health and substance abuse.
Unfortunately, yes, that's absolutely true. There are silos between all of them.
So maybe that could be something that we can kind of talk about and educate. That could be a priority in terms of doing better education about the need for that. And again, I think there's a waiver coming down the pike. It's called, I think it's a 115 waiver, and it's supposedly, I think it's gonna, I know they're going to be bidding for it, and I think it's supposed to begin implementation in early January. I could try to get more information about it, but I think this is what the waiver is doing. It's supposed to encourage networks to be formed so that the networks can then work more closely together to develop some type of model so that health and mental health can work more closely together.
I don't know if this would, well, I don't know if we just wanted to do anything around like getting more information around like the necessity or like the potential necessity for like bringing Be Heard into the neighborhood. Like, did we want to think about education around, or even like garnering data or stats around how many calls for like emotionally disturbed persons are being called in like the Queens neighborhood, and then what's being responded to it? Or is that something you would just think that we could like pull from the 112th precinct anyway?
I think that might be an interesting priority to educate the community, and not only about Be Heard. When we get into it, there's also another program that is similar to Be Heard, but it exists in the subways, which I'll share in a couple of minutes. We go through the resolution. Yeah, why not make that a priority? Why not say that, that's what the resolution calls for, that we want to try to have a Be Heard program here in the community in CB6. And again, funding, supposedly now there are Be Heard programs that exist throughout the city, but none are in CB6 as of now. That could be one of our priorities, I would think. All right, so how do you want to move forward? So we have three potential ideas on the table. We have stigma education, we have general, then we have specific stigma education in terms of veterans, and then we have the third concept of trying to make a priority to ask the city to fund the Be Heard program here in the community. So you want to sit on those three, and then we could think about more ideas. So Kendra, Diana, you want to have a meeting in June to follow up on this stuff, or you want to do it through email? How would you prefer?
I think we could do it via email unless it calls for, if we feel that we're not able to come to a place of all being on the same page, maybe would need to be a meeting, but I think we could figure this out. It's just a matter of prioritizing which one, how we want to go about it.
Okay, I think any one of those three, well, Be Heard, we know that we don't have one. So we know that Be Heard is a need for it. I think the challenges of the other two is, do these programs exist, and how extensive and how well known are they?
Right.
So maybe we can make a recommendation in saying, if stigma education, I know apparently your organization is doing it, but maybe your organization would need more support. I mean, obviously we can't give your organization more money. We can't recommend that, but we can say there's a need. Maybe you go back to your organization and feel, is there a need for more education around stigma?
Of course,
if you feel there is, then maybe we can make that a priority.
There's always a need for that.
Sorry, can you remind me exactly, like, how much money are we able to request through this stream?
Okay, so that's a great question, Ava. Yeah, so let me clarify this. Again, this is one of the things we always, and I'm channeling our former DM here, Frank. So we do not have a checkbook. We don't write checks.
Of course not.
What we could do is we can make recommendations as to what we think there's a need for funding for. And then that's why it's called a priority and it's not called a budget line. So, and then what we do, so basically that's what we push for. And usually, honestly, it's usually the top 10 that get the most attention. But one of the things that we learned this cycle is, again, more specific. And we also learned to try to stay with priorities from year to year. Because if we kind of like drop one and then move on to another one, and it really is a priority, then it gets lost. So again, I think, using this as an example, I think nutrition, which was our focus last year, there are a number of programs that exist. So that's why I guess I'm suggesting maybe shift to a different area. But before we shift there, let's just make sure there's a need. And if there's a need, it doesn't make sense to recommend. So Ava, in terms of actual funding, no, we don't determine that. That's not our role.
But I'm
But then-
wondering if we make like a smaller, sorry, I'm coming at this because I'm a fundraiser and this is how I think. I'm like, if we have like a smaller dollar request, is that more likely to get approved because it's a smaller ask or not really?
It's really got nothing to do with the amount of the request.
Okay.
It's got more to do what we're coming to learn, because the feedback we get for the city, like for example, we used to do in past years, we would give a laundry list. We need this, this, and this. And when we got feedback from the city, they gave us this, but the other 4 they ignored. So that's why I'm saying it's better to be specific in terms of whether it requires a lot of money or a little bit of money. That really doesn't matter that much. Again, because expense items are not anywhere near as expensive as capital items. So capital items are things like buildings and, yeah, like for example, use the Regal Park Library. That's been the priority of this community board for like 25 years. I was there today. It was built in 1974. I think the community board in the 1990s started advocating to try to have a new library. And that was like the top priority. And then finally, after so many years, it's finally getting done. So that's an example, but it's really not a financial thing. It's more of about if it's important, and it doesn't really matter if it's expensive or not. It's more about if we consider this a priority.
Thank you. That's helpful.
All right. So any more questions on this? All right. So Diana and Kendra, you'll put out those three items that we were discussing. And again, it's the education around stigma specifically for veterans, and then the third one was to try to promote Be Heard. Those are the 3 that we were discussing. So we know there's a need for Be Heard. The other 2, maybe we need to do a little bit of research about and see if there is a real need to do more. Or maybe we could find existing programs that, so Bradley, again, I'm thinking about your agency. Again, maybe go back to your agency and say, hey, do you have enough funding? Not to say you're going to get the money if this ever comes through, but just using yours. And maybe there are other organizations that are doing the stigma education in the community. Honestly, I don't know. I mean,
There are a ton of them. As a matter of fact, we're collaborating with a few of them, and Common Point's one of them. Met Council, I'm sure you've heard of. There's many of them that are actually still trying to figure out ways to make sure that we can kind of revamp on how we can bring the awareness and break that stigma.
okay, so maybe it's not a tremendous need in our community.
It definitely is. On the contrary, it's a huge need. That's what I'm saying. There are a lot of organizations coming together, figuring out how they can kind of revamp that, because breaking stigmas is, I think, one of the challenges when it comes to mental health. It's a conversation that no one likes having, and there has always been stigma around it.
All right,
It
so
sounds like what it is that there's a lot of organizations, but those organizations don't have money to do all the things that they want or
Exactly.
need to do in that area.
or
Yeah.
Ava, I'm jumping on what you said. Maybe they don't. It sounds like what Diana's saying is that looking for ways to better do it. So Ava, back to your idea. Maybe we need to do a little research, and find out, are there models of stigma education across the country that work or that seem to have some efficacy? Because Diana, what you seem to be saying is organizations are doing it, but it's not as effective as we would like it to be. Am I getting that right?
It's not as effective. B, they don't have the funding for it, because you need to have funding for that and sponsors and whatnot, because it needs, to be able to keep making it kind of creative and making it as effective as we would want it to be.
Okay, so maybe if this is the way we want to go, maybe the way we kind of structure this and we explain it is that even though there are agencies out there that are doing it, it's, at least in our community, it hasn't been as effective as we would like.
Right.
So maybe we can throw a proposal that, it should be on us. Maybe one of these agencies should get funding to do some research and find effective models, and then kind of work together to implement some effective models in the community.
I like that.
Okay. All right, so maybe we can make that our priority. or a priority.
A priority, yes.
And again, we can have up to 5, but if it's expense, keep in mind that we only get 25 expense items for the full community board. So we can put in up to 5, but there's no guarantee that all 5 will get in. But it doesn't hurt, you know. We could put as many. We could put for expense items as many as 5. So maybe this stigma, we should kind of put in more as kind of like to do further research on effective models.
Can I share something that may or may not be relevant, but I thought I wanted to share with this committee, and I'm not sure if it's relevant to this conversation. Has anybody seen, I just learned what came out today, Center for an Urban Future put out this 50 ideas for a stronger and more equitable Queens. Did anybody else see this?
No?
No.
So it's like 50 ideas for a stronger, more equitable Queens, and it's all like the heads of these organizations that are suggesting different ideas that they think would make Queens better. And there's 2 of them that are related to health that I was like, oh, maybe this is something our committee might be interested
Yeah,
in.
100%. So what are the 2,
Sure.
Ava? Do you know off the top of your head?
So there's one that says create a fund for community-based outpatient mental health clinics that serve low-income immigrants, including those without insurance.
I was about to
And
say
that was-
that. I'm glad it's in there.
That was an idea put forth by the president and CEO of Korean Community Services. And then there was another one that was invite, and this one's from the head of the Long Island Jewish Forest Hills Hospital, said invite health professionals into Queens high schools to help more young people get interested in pursuing medical careers.
Can you share
both
that
of-
link?
I'm sorry.
Yes,
Okay,
please,
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
that would be helpful.
Yeah, let me share.
Yeah. All right.
I'm actually glad you brought
That's
that up.
100%. Thank you, Ava. That's 100% relevant.
Yeah, I was actually glad you brought that up because I was going to mention it, but I didn't know if it
Very.
was relevant. Ava, is that I'm actually speaking tomorrow on the Immigration Task Force for the Queensborough President's Office, and they want me to speak to what my organization's doing for the immigrants. And that's one of the things that I don't know if we offer to people, like what you mentioned about serving the lower income / immigrant community, because some of these people don't have insurance, but we as an organization, my organization does help set that up for them and provide them the services. So we do a more holistic wraparound approach to do that. So I think it's great to hear that that other people are wanting to do that.
Yeah.
Oh, we don't have it in Forest Hills. That's why I don't bring it up. It's more in like Jamaica and Flushing and other communities in Queens. But hey, it'd be great to see it in Forest Hills and Rego Park as well. So
Yeah. Thanks, Ava.
Yeah, no problem. I shared it in the chat. Did you get it?
Yeah, I saw.
mhm.
So I'm actually saving it, and I'll send it to the committee. All right. So I guess to sum up, so now we have a number of proposals, right? We've got the stigma education, and I think that's kind of shifted more to providing funding for already existing organizations so they can come together and kind of try to come up with better models to do the stigma education. That's one idea. Maybe, Bradley, we could incorporate the veterans into that too. Then we talked about Be Heard, and now we talked about the 2 that Ava just suggested. So I think, you know, so Diana or Kendra, you'll put those out in email to the committee?
Yes, I can do that because I'm writing it all down in this report. So I will add everything that I'm putting in here into a email, and then we can figure out like which ones out of these 5, or if all 5, or also get more ideas.
Sounds good. Thank you, Kendra.
Yep.
Thank you. All right. So I guess we're done with this part.
All right, and it's on you now. You want to do the resolution, and then we can go to the rest of the stuff.
Yeah. So you want me to? Okay. So I'll put out the resolution. Let me see if I can share it. I think this is it. I hope it. Yeah, this is it. All right. Everybody can see it.
Yeah.
Okay. You want to just? So should I just read it? And
Yeah,
we
why
can go
not?
along?
It'll be quicker and faster that way.
Okay. So basically, Whereas Win Rosario on March 27th, 2024 contacted the police to assist him when he was having a psychiatric episode, whereas body camera footage was released documenting the interventions made by the police escalated the situation instead of de-escalating, whereas this escalation led to the death of Win Rosario, whereas Councilmember Schulman released a statement the day of the death highlighted the need for a mental health professional being summoned to the scene, whereas BHARD has been successfully utilized to intervene in situations like the ones presented by Win Rosario, whereas a number of community meetings when various officials of the NYPD have been questioned about the effectiveness of BHARD, and the responses received made it clear that BHARD was not well known by the leadership of the NYPD. Be it resolved, we call upon Councilmember Schulman to advocate for BHARD team to be established serving our community. We call upon the NYPD to train all staff, especially staff who take 911 calls, when it would be best to call in a BHARD team, and when intervention by NYPD officers would be needed. So I drafted that, and then Heather wanted to add a second piece. There's another program similar to BHARD. I hope I can find it. It's called let me see if I can find it. Hold on. It's called the Scout Program. So let me see if I can find it. Yeah, okay. So Heather wanted us to add this. So it's called the Scout, Subway Co-Response Outreach Teams. New mental health response teams, NYC clinicians and NY work together, focus 100% on the most troubling clients, acutely psychotic or deeply entrenched. Help Right Now approach so far 90 days, 90 plus clients to hospital shelters same day, including 16 involuntary transfers to hospital psychiatric evaluation. Front of the pop line to new New York State, New York City psych beds and supportive housing options. And then they want to expand that. So why Scout? To help New Yorkers most in need. The last, the least, the lost. 2,000 unsheltered New Yorkers in the subways, many with severe mental illness. To improve, why we would encourage to ride the subway more often. So basically, similar idea. Meets safety change of subway. New York City Department of Homeless Services and Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, nursing, social workers for mental health outreach expertise, police officers for safety and support. So basically, it's similar to BHARD, but you still have police support, but you do have nurses and social workers going in and hopefully de-escalating. So this is a second program, and actually, Councilmember Schulman mentioned this in her press release, that she was also supportive of this program as well. So any questions about the Scout program?
No.
Okay.
Mark, are you able to send us this? Can you send that handout out as well?
Oh yeah. I can send it around. I'll send it to you guys, and you can send it around to the full committee. Oh, the
Perfect.
Scout program?
Yes, please.
Okay, I will.
Thank you.
All right. So
Can you put the resolution back up, that draft resolution?
yeah.
That's
Let me share the resolution. Oh, whoops, wrong one. So here's the resolution. So I guess we would add see, I'm not that familiar with Scout, so I wouldn't want to put it I don't know. I mean, I think maybe add it as a third resolution, as a third resolved. Because again, I'm personally not that. I don't know if any of us are really familiar with Scout.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with Scout, but boy, is there a need for it. You know, the last couple weeks I've been really dealing with like NYPD in the subways and just, you know, their responses, I think, all week, and most of it has been in Harlem, but there's been an incident here in Forest Hills also. you know, their responses is like they're intending, like their whole goal is to arrest people. And, you know, I stopped them from arresting quite a few young people and really like admonish them because, you know, you're supposed to be here to protect and serve, and you are completely doing the opposite of it. Especially when it comes to like young people trying to use their student Metro cards. Like I was so appalled to see these officers. The students are out past the time, right, that the student Metro cards are supposed to be used, which is just ridiculousness anyway. Obviously, the students need to get to where they're going, regardless of what time it is. These kids were not doing anything wrong. And to watch them go up to the teller and ask the teller if they could go through the door and them tell the person, no, go ask the police, and the police officers flat out look in their face and tell them, sorry, we can't help you, and basically threaten them that if they would just jump the turnstile, then they'll get arrested. It blows my mind that this is like the reality of how we treat our young people and our people that are struggling with mental health and substance use. And I see it everywhere. So I don't know if it, like, you could add it maybe as like a third here. I know it really doesn't go into this with Win Rosario because that didn't happen in the subway, but like the same things that happened to him happen to people in the subway all the time, whether it's them getting arrested and it's, you know, the police kind of instigating that process as opposed to just helping people get on the damn train. I ended up swiping a whole bunch of people. And you know, thank God we can do that now. I didn't have like an unlimited Metro card where you had to wait X amount of time. But it's just sad to see how we keep treating people in the subways, and it's only getting worse now that we have the National Guard there.
Yeah. So I'm adding, as we're talking, I'm typing into the resolution. We also, as a third part, we also call upon our, because this is a state program, state representatives to facilitate bringing the scout
Sorry,
program.
just to Kendra's point, like about police in the subway sometimes escalating the situation. From what you shared, it sounded like the Scout program does include more police in the subway. So
It seems like, again, I don't know
that's
that
why
much
I'm like a
about
little
it.
hesitant to add it in, not knowing exactly like how that works, you know?
Okay. So how about this? I kind of agree with you, Ava, because, you know, honestly, I put this out and then Heather mentioned, because Councilmember Schulman mentioned it in her in her statement, but I too have similar questions as I was reading that. Because be heard, there are no police involved. The police is supposed to be called in as backup. Only if if they feel the situation is escalating, then police could be called in. But the Be Heard team, and with the Scout program, it seems like, yeah. So how about, how are people comfortable? Let's just leave it out for now. And maybe we could get a little bit more information about the Scout program. I mean, so if we approve this resolution as is without the Scout program, we can always, my suggestion would be, let's research more fully and see what the Scout program looks like, and learn more about it. And then if we feel it's appropriate, then maybe we can do a poll for the committee. But what I would suggest, let's at least get, I think we're all clear that at least my sense from everybody is what happened to Win Rosario is clear that we need the Be Heard program here. But maybe we should leave out the Scout program until we get a little bit more information. And if once we get more research on it, and if the committee's comfortable with it, we can add it. If not, then we don't have to add it. That's kind of like my suggestion.
I like that suggestion.
Okay, so I'm going to take it out.
Now,
Requesting-
one question in the email that I was going to send over to you guys about the priorities, one of ours was around conducting like research by an external party to determine the need for mental health responses in the community, such as Be Heard when people are calling for help. Would we want to add that priority into this resolution somehow, or?
No, I think the
Okay.
resolution would support the priority.
Gotcha. Okay, perfect.
In other words, I don't think we have to add the resolution to the priority, but I think the priority would support it. In other words, we're calling for Be Heard, but then we're also asking for money to pay for Be Heard. So I think it kind of goes hand in hand, but I think the resolution supports the priority.
It's consistent.
And, if it turns out the Scout program doesn't follow, maybe we can put out there that, maybe we would prefer to have a program that goes into the subways where, well, again, we do know that there are outreach teams for people who are homeless, right? Or people without shelter in the subways. And those are supposed to be social work teams. There are no police for those teams, right? Because that's more about engaging people. And we know that with people who are looking for places to live, if they have concomitant mental health issues, then the approach has to be a more engaging approach. It can't be an aggressive approach. It can't be an escalating approach. And this is what social workers and mental health professionals are trained to do. So maybe what we should make that a priority, that we would prefer to have a program similar to Be Heard, but in the subways.
Gotcha.
Something else to think about. All right, but
Yeah, and I wonder, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
No,
ahead.
I was just thinking it also seems related to, I think the challenge with the subways is that the police do outnumber social workers present in the subways. And like maybe that's something that we should draw attention to, which is that, as you shared, social workers have more effective interventions. They're less likely to escalate the situation, and yet there's far fewer of them in the subways than there are police.
Or the ones that are in the subways are not tasked to do that job. They're tasked more to do outreach to people who look like they may be homeless or be having mental health episodes. Because again, and I can tell you that when I brought up Be Heard, sometimes police, sometimes some people question the effectiveness of sending social workers into situations that could easily escalate. So that's some of the challenges that Be Heard faces. But so far, it's been, at least in the rest of the city, it's been shown to be working pretty well when Be Heard teams are called in. Let's put it this way. I haven't heard of an episode where Be Heard team was called in and something bad happened.
It's the same thing about what they say on Rikers. It's the same concept. No program, no nonprofits have ever been harmed by the people that are on Rikers, yet somehow the officers get harmed all the times, right? It's the way you treat people, plain and simple.
Right. Okay, so let's get back. So I'm going to leave out anything about Scout, and maybe we could get more information, then we can decide if we want to add it. But I'm not a member of the committee, so I can't call for the motion. So could somebody call to approve this resolution as submitted, unless you want to make changes at this point?
I can call for the resolution, for the motion for the resolution to be as is.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, everybody in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion carries. I'll send it over. And we'll send it over with an explanation that we had a discussion about Scout, and we still had a lot of questions about it. So we decided not to add it to this resolution until we get more information about the Scout program. All right, that's it. Thank you. So Diane, Kendra, back to you.
Perfect. We had 3 events that were recent, the street fair, the health fair, and then the Narcan training. Does anyone, I just wanted to give space if anyone wanted to like talk about any of those, or if anything came up or came out of them. If not, we can totally like move on. But those, since the last time we had a subcommittee meeting, those were 3 events that a variety of you were engaged in. So I wanted to allow space.
So can you hear me? Okay. I can't tell sometimes, my blue outline doesn't show up. So Mark and I were at the was it the
Health fair.
The health fair.
Right.
And I thought it was great. However, I felt there was a little bit of lack of communication, because I heard that Northwell showed up at 9 a.m. and left at like 12, when we didn't start the health fair until 11. and then everyone packed up by 2 p.m. Diana, her table, they stayed, and then we stayed a little bit longer, but like everyone else just backed up. So I don't know. I guess what I'm just trying to say is, when we do this in the future, we make sure we like, and that can be the person that does this, is just have more communication with the precinct, because it was a little confusing. That's all I'm gonna say.
Actually, Brendan, I'm gonna jump in on you with this. There was a lot of I wouldn't say it was disorganized. I would say that there was a little bit of a frenzy, especially with the traffic as well. They closed one side of the road. It caused a lot of issues. I think that it was also they were supposed to do it also in the room where they usually do the early voting. And I think last minute when they got there, they changed their minds and did it outside. So everyone had to carry everything that they had set up inside that room and then go outside and kind of like, I think it was definitely a few changes that happened last minute, which probably caused some of those minor setbacks.
Right. And I'll bring up positive. I mean, I ended up doing. I got there pretty much when we opened at 11. I set up at 10:30, and yes, it was very frustrating to walk into the room, set up the table, and then be told, "Whoops, we're not here. We're outside." So, yes, that was not fun. But then once we set up, and we actually had a great location. We were getting we got lots of foot traffic, and I know Diana, you were right
we were
by
in the
us.
front.
So,
yeah, we were all in the front.
yeah, and honestly, we had a lot of really great conversations. I think. I mean,
I think so too.
And I counted. We asked people. We got about 12 people who expressed an interest in joining our mailing list, and a few of the people actually expressed a desire. I was talking about how even if you're not a member of the community board, that you could become a public member like Ava is, and there were a number of people who were interested, which I thought was great. And the other thing too, which I think was good about it, and maybe as we talk about if we still plan to do our own health fair in the fall, and maybe some of the takeaways, the positives, the negatives of this one, or the challenges, we should learn from and not have the same challenges if we do it. But right now, the community board is not strong in Regal Park. We don't have a lot of community board members from Regal Park. And what's interesting was people came over to the table. A number of them were talking about a specific issue right by there, that there's noise and flooding. Remember, Brantley? And and it was interesting. And it's like something I don't think any of us really knew about. But the issue is, if you don't have people from that area, which we don't, how do you know? So again, I really thought it was good for us to engage that part of the community, because I think that part of the community needs more engagement. And I'm hoping that of the people that we got, they will follow up and they will become public members, or even apply for the community board, or or get more engaged. There was one woman came over and said, "I'm like the mayor of these 3 blocks." So I went, "Great, come to us. We would love you to come to community board or become a public member." And she was one of the people who said that she'll look into it. So that was kind of like the positive parts of it, I think.
So would we think that we would want to do our own health fair in the fall, or would we still just want to keep adding to this health fair? Every year, since the 112th precinct does it, we could just keep making.
Well, again, it really wasn't. It was a health and safety fair, and a lot of the groups that were there weren't necessarily health. I mean, you had the 112th Police Precinct. I was the main sponsor, but you had the police there. You had other more civic-oriented groups.
Gotcha.
You really didn't have many health providers.
Gotcha.
Even though it was called the health fair. There were a couple, right? Brantley, you were there. So there really weren't that many health providers.
It seemed like it was also in sections. I felt like we were in a section with a lot of people that offered certain types of services, like mental health services or healthcare services, from what I saw. Like Sunnyside Community Services were there and they were selling their services. But then you go down a little bit further, you have the NYPD and FDNY, and then there was some Girl Scouts selling cookies. And then
the Lions Club also.
The Lions Club. I think Mark, you mentioned there was someone there who was a certified something, like a. I
Oh,
don't-
well, they were giving out Narcan kits.
Yeah,
No,
it
no, no,
was,
no.
it
There
was,
was
Oh, okay.
there was another, like a woman you mentioned who was like, she called herself a master something. I don't know what it was, like certain type of health. I don't know, remember what it was
You
you
talking about
mentioned.
Rachel Kellner?
I don't. No, 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 not that one.
Oh, not Rachel. Okay.
We were talking
So Rachel
about it
Kellner came over to us.
yeah.
She's the head of Metro Village.
It's not her, but it's
He-
okay.
yeah.
I think that if Kendra, I think you brought up a good point, and I just think that we all need to think about our schedules too, because we're all very busy. So if it's something we want to do, we need to start planning for it. And I think we have to be also, from what I heard from Mark, we have to be we have to allow everyone. So if we allow like a certain therapist to come in, we have to allow all therapists to come in who are private, or I think, or they have to have like certain types of offerings. I don't know what the rules are, but just want to throw that out there too.
And if we decide to do it, it's going to be a lot of work. Let's be real for a second. So we would need people who are really dedicated to doing this, because it's going to be requiring, I don't know if we can rely on the office. We could, I don't know how much we can rely on the office to contact, but I would hope, like, for example, right, LIJ was there. LIJ, the hospital was there. But let's keep in mind, there were 3 more hospital outpatient clinics here in the community. Be nice to have all 4. But it was only LIJ, it was the only LIJ. So again, I think if we would organize one, I would hope that we would get more options and choices.
So right now, we have definitely the domestic violence webinar series that we're still looking to launch in like September, October. I know we planned on meeting, I believe it was in July, we said to kind of get that more under wraps. Do we want to, at that time, determine if we also want to try to think about the health fair and kind of work smarter, not harder? Because a lot of those partners that we're going to be using for this series would also kind of be partners that would be interested in probably coming in this health fair.
That kind of makes sense. I thought we were going to meet in June. We have to meet in June because we have to finalize the budget, unless we're going to do the
For
budget.
June, yeah, sorry, I'm on June. Right.
Right.
I don't know why.
If we're going to do it online, we don't have to, but if we meet, so I hear it. So it kind of makes sense, right? Maybe use the this DV program and pulling together partners in this, and then maybe we can use this once, kind of like, again, in my head, I think about what we've done with the intergenerational program, where we put together many different groups, and through that we have more support, and then we have a base. So maybe first do the DV series, see how that works out, and then maybe have the folks who plan the DV series plan a health fair.
Yep.
Because that would then take the pressure off of this committee to plan the whole thing. And like Kendra just said, we would have already a core of groups that are already engaged in healthcare that would be interested in joining the health fair.
I'm all supportive of what you said, Kendra. That's all I'm going to say.
All right. So do we think we need to have another meeting in June around these priorities, or we should just send out this email and work via email? I think having another quick meeting in June, even if it's just like for an hour or something, might even be better than the back and forth with the emails. But I'm totally down with whatever this committee wants to rock with.
how about we try with one email, and then if it doesn't work, we go for a meeting.
Yeah.
Well, just remember that to get the meetings on the calendar, it takes a long time. So if we were going to do one and try to get one in June, we would need to be sending it now, because I'm sure that calendar's already getting there.
Correct.
So I'm just looking at the calendar real quick on the website. It looks like the 6th, which is a Thursday, is open. The week of the 10th through the 13th is open. I believe we have a board meeting that week, though.
No, we moved it back to the 18th.
That's right. Yep. Okay, I see it.
Moved it back to the 18th because
Yeah. So if we're trying to meet before the board meeting, we have, looks like the 6th of June, and then the 10th through the 13th, because June
Let's
3rd.
do the 6th.
I can't do the 6th. I'm a moderator down at the People's Forum, so I'll be with those folks all night. I could do, you said the 10th, and what was the other date?
11th, 12th, or 13th. It's the 10th through the 13th that's available, looks like, on the calendar. That's what I'm seeing. But it hasn't been updated because I scheduled June 3rd for the Consumer Affairs Committee, and that hasn't been put on there yet. So we can email them and see what dates are available during that week, the 10th through the 13th.
I personally can do either one. I could do actually right now I could do any one of those three personally. 10th, 11th, or 13th.
I can do the 13th.
I can do the 13th. Ava?
Sorry. 13th works for me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, so let's ask for the 13th.
Yeah, I say we just ask for it, and then it'll just be easier because we can all be together. I will still send the email around so that way folks can we can make it a short meeting. We've already kind of thought about it, processed it, and can make it more of a short meeting.
All right, and when do you want to start planning the TV series?
I mean, we could do that in the end part of that June meeting if you wanted to as well. Because again, I think we already kind of have a little bit of a framework for that to go on. So I think we can add more to it on that one as well. Again, for that September, October timeframe of a launch.
Again, Heather suggests September might be challenging, more to shoot for October.
October, okay, perfect.
Yeah, and maybe at the next meeting, people could think about who we want to have coalition partners with.
And I can
we have a couple ideas already.
Yep.
So maybe we can kind of, and next month, if we do plan to talk about the TV program, maybe we could think about which partners we would like to include, and then we all agree these are the partners that we reach out to them and see if they want to join this type of coalition. I know we have a couple people who've already expressed interest, but we just need to firm it up.
I love that.
For the budget priorities, the two that I had shared from that list, do you think that we should also reach out to the people who suggested those ideas?
Oh, you mean that?
Because I don't want to be taking credit for their ideas. Yeah, those budget ideas that we were.
Well, we could write in it, can't we? As seen, in this report or in correlation with this report, Mark, so that way they get the credit for where we pulled it from. Yeah.
Yeah, we could.
Yeah, we can. I can try to reach out to them as well. I don't. I have no idea how much we'd get back, right? Compared to in such a short amount of time.
We can ask the office to reach out to them.
Yes, we can ask the office to reach out.
Why don't we ask the office to reach out to them? That I have a copy of it, so I'll send it to you, Kendra, and
Yep, I added it into this report too. I added the link and the name of it.
Oh, okay, good. And maybe we can ask the office to reach out to them and let them know that, we're considering possibly putting this as budget priority. We'd like to get more information about it or whatever.
Yep, I love that.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
That was all that was on the report from last time, but is there any other new information or any other people that we need to try to consult with?
There was one thing I actually recall from our last meeting. I don't know if everyone else here does, but Mark and Kendra, we were talking about putting together kind of like a list or a list of what resources there are out there, like you talking about, when there's a person who's dealing with a crisis in the middle of the night and the hotline number to call, things of that nature that we could maybe give out as a handout.
Yes. Do we want to appoint someone to start that list? Do we want to do it in a Google Doc and send it around?
I think it makes more sense to do as a Google Doc.
I agree. Yes.
You, Diana, would you mind starting the Google Doc, or Mark? Just because I am not a Google Doc gal when it comes to starting it. I always screw it up. I'm admitting my flaw when it comes to the Google Doc. Once it's there, I can do it, but the whole getting it for some reason, I always make it where it's hidden or people can't see it or there's people missing or I don't know.
I could definitely get a head start on it.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna put your name down here.
So you'll start it and just send it around to all of us.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we were discussing kind of like highlighting, just like in, I guess I'm more into geriatrics more. There's a continuum of care in geriatrics, but there's also a continuum of care in mental health care,
Yes.
right? There's
And
different
I think
levels.
making like a section for each one so that people could
Right.
just see.
Right. So that's kind of like, it would be nice to kind of have that in one place so people can see that there's a continuum of care. I mean, that came up last month, when we were talking to Emmanuel and his program.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And it seemed like he was more like some type of different type of model that he was using, that he was trying to provide more socialization and stuff in his program. So it wasn't like a straight mental health clinic.
No, it's a combination of a few.
Yeah.